Hey everyone, Zelcher here, and I am one of the worst YouTubers ever. I spent weeks coming up with a video idea for Across the Spider-Verse. At first I was gonna make a review of both films, but I wasn't too excited about that, so I scrapped it. Then it became a hot take discussion where I talked about the many arguments surrounding the film. This included Dr. Umar's bizarre rant about interracial marriage, the Twitter trans debate. There was also this one about Miles being a racist caricature of a black teenager. So that was funny, I guess. I spent days writing what I thought was a pretty good, fun script, and then I lost interest again. But you know what I didn't lose interest in? This 40-second soundbite from a review of Across the Spider-Verse by a guy I don't really watch that much, and quite frankly, I don't even like him. This statement has been living in my head rent-free for weeks, and the only way I can evict it is if I make this video. I am well aware this is all pretty much weeks old beef that no one cares about anymore, but I have to do it or else I will go insane. This is my therapy. Now, if you don't know who the Critical Drinker is, I envy you. The SparkNotes version is that he's a film reviewer who's also part of the anti-PC, anti-SJW side of YouTube. I recently saw this term called woke spotting, which perfectly encapsulates this brand of anti-SJW film reviewer. The Critical Drinker is essentially a new age CinemaSins, but instead of looking for stupid sins, he looks for moments where the film is too woke. And sometimes he finds these moments at the cost of being wrong. So yeah, essentially just CinemaSins. Normally I don't talk about low-hanging fruit like this, but there was something so wildly stupid about this take that I have to analyze it. So before we start, I'm going to show you the 40-second clip right now, so you have the full context going forward. If you think I'm leaving anything out, the video will be linked in the description down below. Alright, so brace yourself for what you're about to hear.
Also, I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident. The first movie portrayed him as an aging, burned out loser who only redeems himself at the end, while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it. Is this some weird attempt to mock and belittle the Spider-Man that most people know and love, who incidentally just happens to be the only straight white man in the entire movie? I don't know, man, it just kinda leaves a sour taste in my mouth, that's all.
Now, believe it or not, there is a bit of truth to this clip. White men have definitely become the new punching bag for a few Hollywood films, the purpose of which is to give the minority leads a bit more value. The Charlie's Angels reboot and the Ghostbusters reboot, the first one, are a few examples that come to mind, and they were pretty overt in their male mockery. Specifically with the Ghostbusters remake, Chris Hemsworth played a character that was a complete idiot. Like, cosmically stupid. And this is a unique characteristic made just for this film, as the character he parallels from the original does not act like this at all. So yes, I can concede the point that sometimes white men are mocked in a lazy attempt to elevate the status of a film's lead. However, this isn't anything new. Hollywood always cycles through different groups to use as their punching bag. I mean, there's the dumb blonde trope, women being used as an object of desire in a way to make men seem more suave. Hell, not just blonde women, but like, women of other races were also designed to be dumb and hot for their male leads. And let's not even mention how black people were introduced to Hollywood films. That shit went beyond mockery. My overall point here is that throughout Hollywood history, they have always tried elevating their leads, predominantly white leads, at the expense of different groups of people. It's a very simple common trope, and it's fine if you don't like it. I get it, no one likes being the butt of the joke. It's not funny when it happens to me, guys. But with all that said, I don't think any of that is going on here. I don't think the intention was to mock white Peter to make Miles look cooler. I think you just don't know what a Spider-Man story is. The most interesting part of this clip is how he refers to Peter as an aging, burned out loser who's constantly being mocked. Yeah, that's kind of what happens in a Spider-Man story. Peter Parker is constantly mocked and belittled by his peers, both before and after being bitten.
Why in the world do you think I'd ever go out with Midtown High's champion geek?
Sorry, Peter. I guess we're still losers.
Even as he grows up, the man does not get his life together. He works a crappy minimum wage job, either as a photojournalist or a pizza boy. He fails all his classes, he constantly fumbles women, some in more drastic ways, and anytime he gets close to being happy with one, the universe somehow comes together to fuck him over. Sometimes he overcomes these obstacles, and sometimes he gives up. He may be Spider-Man, but he is also a human being, and a relatable human being at that. One of the reasons why Spider-Man is so popular is because of his relatability. Unlike most other heroes, in his real life, Peter faces problems that any average person would have to face, and he reacts to these situations like an average person would. Getting hit with the loss of a parent and a divorce back-to-back would devastate anyone, and naturally he reacts by being depressed and isolating himself. It's by no means a healthy way to deal with this, but it is realistic. Also, this isn't mocking him. Based off the footage the drinker shows here, I get the impression that his idea of being mocked is just Spider-Man being depressed. How else do I interpret this? Aside from maybe 2 fat jokes, the guy is never really mocked in the film. And if we're talking about respecting the Spider-Man we know and love, this, in a strange way, is doing just that. There is literally a meme about how Spider-Man fans love seeing Peter at the lowest point in his life. And it's not because we're all cynical assholes, it's because the drama makes for a compelling story. We want to see Spider-Man overcome his own personal demons. The best Spider-Man film of all time is literally about Peter going through a midlife crisis and actually giving up on Spider-Man, only to be reminded about how important the responsibility of Spider-Man is. SpiderVerse is like the 4th time they got to tell a Spider-Man story for the big screen. There is no choice but to tread old ground and try their best to make it unique. And I think Peter B. Parker is the perfect example of that. Taking an old Spider-Man, putting him through the ringer again, and then resolving that conflict in a way only this film could. So no, I don't think this film is mocking the original Peter Parker at all. He may be jaded from his life experiences, but he's still out there doing Spider-Man things. And you know what? He does it very well too. We're gonna get into some hard, cold facts here. Everything before was kind of based in opinion. If you're consumed by identity politics, or if you don't like seeing Peter go through a midlife crisis, then yeah, you could still be upset about these things, regardless about what I said. But to say Peter B. Parker was not a competent Spider-Man?
Also, I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident.
I'm sorry, don't know what film you were watching. There are a lot of scenes that show you that this Peter Parker is the most experienced Spider-Man here. Like when he's tied up by Miles in their first encounter. You know, the whole watch the hand scene. This emphasizes how experienced Peter is as Spider-Man. And there's also the moment when Peter kicks Miles off the team because he's kind of a liability. What makes this scene so tragic is that Peter was the only person who actually fully believed in his ability at this point. But he has to finally admit that Miles just isn't as capable as the rest of the team. In fact, let's stay on the Miles is a liability train, because it also helps explain another Peter is incompetent moment. The heist into Doc Ock's lab is kind of messy, but it isn't Peter's fault. He had a surefire plan of sneaking into the facility, getting the password, getting the info, and sneaking out. A very routine plan for an experienced Spider-Man.
Into each other. This is pretty standard Spider-Man stakes, you get used to it.
But the plan gets screwed up because Miles wants to tag along, and because he's not in control of his powers, he creates a ruckus that should not have happened. And yes, the experienced Spider-Man does get captured, but it's because he's trying to protect Miles. Likewise, during their escape, Peter would have a much easier time swinging and fending off Doc Ock if he had both web shooters, but he had to give one to Miles, and as a result, handicapped himself. This is really the only time Peter is incompetent, and it's because he's playing babysitter for Miles. On his own, we see that he's still got it. In fact, if you think about it, Miles is the one that is consistently incompetent. But also, that doesn't mean that Miles is being mocked by the film. You know, characters are allowed to have character flaws, which lead into character development in a character's arc. And you know, I kind of get the impression he doesn't really care about that in this film. There's a moment where the drinker says that Peter only redeems himself at the very end.
The first movie portrayed him as an aging, burned out loser who only redeems himself at the end.
Redeem himself from what, exactly? Being jaded, being depressed? These are really the only things he accuses him of being. And if that's truly the case, no, you're wrong. If anything, Peter's jaded behavior ends around the time he teaches Miles to swing. He's happy to become a mentor, and again, he's the only person to actually believe in him. He even tries protecting him from the other spider folk. If he's supposed to redeem himself from being kind of a shithead towards Miles during their first meeting, well, I think he did that well before the ending. No, what I think the drinker really means is that Peter has to redeem himself for being a loser. And he only does that when he goes back to his universe and gets back with Mary Jane. The very end of the film. And based off his tone, that's a bad thing. The solution isn't to make his redemption happen sooner, since that already kind of happens. No, what it sounds like is that the drinker wants Peter B. Parker to be more like Perfect Peter instead. The character who has his life intact, is generally happier, and, more importantly, has no character flaws. Now, wanting Peter to be more perfect is not a bad desire, but what I don't think he realizes is that you lose some good emotional beats if you make this change. You see, a lot of the film's best emotional moments hinge on the fact that Peter and his life are imperfect. As I mentioned before, the web-swinging scenes shift Peter from being dismissive of Miles to becoming kind of a father figure to him, something he was afraid of back in his own universe. And that culminates to this moment at the very end. It's a student has become the master moment, where Miles shows him how much he's matured over the course of this journey with his help. And just like how Peter believed in him before, he believes that Peter can fix things back home. If this was Perfect Peter, there would be no initial dismissiveness, and there would be no fixing things back home. His life would already be intact. Now, these moments have already been analyzed to death. Instead, I want to talk about my own personal favorite moment, the fight between Spider-Man and the Prowler. It's brief, but there's quite a bit to say. By this point, we've learned that the Prowler is in fact Uncle Aaron, who is Miles' initial mentor of the film. He looks up to him more, and confides in him things he doesn't tell his parents. However, by this point, Peter B. Parker has also become a mentor for him, becoming the only person who believes in his ability to be an effective Spider-Man. And so this brief encounter also becomes a battle between mentors, and their paths have given them very different lives. Uncle Aaron has a life that Miles admires, and despite a conflict with his brother, things seem to be going good for him. But presumably he achieved this life from doing dirty work as the Prowler. On the other hand, Peter is a hero, but his life is in shambles. The unfortunate truth is that being a superhero is a thankless job. Being Spider-Man is a great responsibility, but it's also a great burden. As much as he may not want to, he has to choose one path over the other. And in this scene, it's Spider-Man who prevails. And after seeing Across the SpiderVerse, spoilers for those who haven't seen it yet, click on this timecode now, it's confirmed that Miles would have become the Prowler had it not been for the spider being brought over from Earth-42, giving this scene a little more impact. However, that impact would not be there if this was Perfect Peter. There would be no dilemma since being Spider-Man would simply be a perfect job. I have no doubt that Phil Lord and Christopher Miller could make a good film using Perfect Peter instead of Peter B. Parker, but the emotional beats of the story would have to change drastically, and I really don't see that being an improvement.
Is this the woke mind virus? I think they are.
So there's still a bit more to this statement in regards to Across the Spider-Verse, which I don't really care about too much, but since we're here, I might as well go over it briefly. He essentially says that it's stupid for Peter to bring his daughter into dangerous situations,
while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it.
Now, I thought it was kinda stupid too, although I saw it more as a silly stupid, and I didn't think too much of it afterwards. But now that I am thinking about it, the film does explain why he brings his child to the Spider Society so often. It's because he had her due to the bond he had with Miles as he taught him how to be Spider-Man, and he tries to recapture that feeling by bringing his daughter to the Spider Society. It's that common trope where the father makes their child play the sports he likes in the hopes that he becomes a professional player, but instead of sports, it's becoming a superhero. And I like this scene, so I'm willing to believe that Peter takes his daughter on this high-speed, dangerous chase for the sake of keeping this in. But not everyone is going to suspend their disbelief in the same way, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. In fact, there is a moment that breaks my suspension of disbelief, and that's Spider-Woman being pregnant. Every time she's on screen, I can't help but think, like, that kid is just scrambled. Like, there's a moment during the chase where Miles knocks her off her bike and swings her into a speeding vehicle. Whatever's in there is just gone. I'm sorry. Anyways, I want to end this video talking about this brand of woke spotting film reviewers. And to do that, I'm going to share a personal anecdote. So back in college, I took a film class where we watched a bunch of films. Go figure. Our weekly assignment was to analyze these films and post our thoughts in a discussion board. My Zoomer audience will know exactly what I'm talking about. We could analyze various aspects of the film, such as editing, cinematography, lighting, color, themes, symbolism, etc. Now, in our first week, some guy decided to frame their analysis as a review, and in this review, he discussed plot holes. And do you want to know what film we watched that week? It was A Trip to the Moon, made in 1902. It's a short sci-fi film about 5 astronomers that make a rocket and take a trip to the moon. And it looks like this. One of the plot holes was that when the astronomers get captured, spoilers, I guess. But when these guys get captured, they manage to break free very easily, and then they kill the king easily too. You know, like, why did his loyal subjects not jump in to save him? That was it. Everything else? Perfect sense. You know, it amazes me how someone could take a film class that discusses the many different aspects of filmmaking, watch A Trip to the Moon, an impressive achievement in early visual effects, and the thing they focus on, the thing that sticks with them about this film, are the plot holes. CinemaSins truly ruined a generation of moviegoers. Now, this is not to say that plot holes are a bad topic of discussion and should never be talked about. It's a valid form of criticism when applied properly. However, lately that hasn't been the case. There are people who find enjoyment out of finding plot holes and plot contrivances. They go into films looking for that specific thing, and if they can't find any, they will interpret the film in the most uncharitable way possible in order to get what they want. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yes, the industry engages in phony progressivism. Yes, it sometimes panders to certain demographics, sometimes at the expense of other demographics. Yes, sometimes films act as propaganda for the director's viewpoints. But let's not kid ourselves, Hollywood has been doing this for decades. And yeah, it's always been called out, but never as vocal as it is right now. Coincidentally, a moment in time when white men are not the only ones being pandered to. And just like CinemaSins plot holes, I think woke spotting is just a super reductive and shallow way of interpreting films. One that clouds far more important problems within the industry, like animation and VFX studios being routinely exploited. In fact, that happened to this very same film, and yet none of these commentators actually gave a shit about that. The best this topic got was a 5-second mention by The Drinker in one video. Calling out women was just far more important. And then there's things like corporations shelving complete projects, creating pseudo-lost media, and absolutely fucking over entire creative teams. But somehow The Drinker spins this as a positive thing, a sign that corporations won't bow down to woke politics anymore. Or, as he likes to call it, the message. Take a wild guess what that means. I've seen so many dipshit comments on my videos where people say how base David Zaslav is for shelving Batgirl, without realizing that he did it to a lot of other shows too, and now streaming platforms are starting to feel comfortable doing it too. You have essentially normalized big corporations eliminating any show they want for the sole purpose of saving a few bucks. All for the sake of getting rid of one woke film. Awesome. Very cool. And listen, when The Drinker alludes to the message, this is the shit he's talking about. Seeing Peter Parker, a white guy with flaws that are integral to the Spider-Man story, and going, no, that's not okay. This is pushing an agenda. This is anti-white propaganda for the sole purpose of making the black character cooler. This was the first thing that came to his mind, and it stuck with him long enough to mention in his video. This is what happens when the woke mind virus becomes terminal. CinemaSins has lost the influence it once had long ago, but from its ashes came another embarrassing form of media analysis. And if things keep going at this rate, people will start to claim that A Trip to the Moon is too woke. Hey everyone, Zelcher here, and it is very late at night, so I'm going to make this outro very quick. Yes, I have dipped my toe into the drama call-out side of YouTube, except this is a topic that's already passed, no one cares about anymore, so I'm really living up to the banner of this channel. I don't know, this was just a topic that was stuck in my head for so long after I saw it on Twitter. It was like one of those images where if you stare at it long enough, it gets more wrong. Same thing with this statement. The more I thought about it, the more layers of incorrectness were revealed to me. And now I have made the video. I actually might make more videos on The Drinker, because as I was trying to familiarize myself with his content, I came across a couple of more kind of like just batshit crazy takes, like the one on fucking Warner Discovery canceling films. It's like, it is insane how far the woke mind virus has infected this man's head. And yeah, we'll see how I feel down the road on that. As per usual, shout out to the patrons. You guys are awesome. And I will see you in the next one.